The Diver 65 has been a runaway success for Oris. Much like the Black Bay for Tudor, the Diver 65 is Oris's Swiss Army knife. Coming in multiple colorways, dial configurations, complications, and sizes, the watch is a jack of all trades. Today we'll be taking a look at the 40mm numeral dial version. Oris created the Diver 65 to harken back to one of their original dive watches introduced in, you guessed it, 1965. The watch is undeniably vintage inspired in both its styling and execution and bears a close resemblance to its ancestor. However, there is nothing vintage about the materials and movement used in the Diver 65. It feels like a modern watch and doesn't give the wearer any of the vintage risk. Of all the various sizes the Diver 65 comes in, the 40mm version is my favorite. The proportions on the case are just right and it wears comfortably on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Part of what makes this watch so comfortable is the crazy taper on the bracelet. Tapering from 20mm at the watch head to 14mm at the clasp, the 6mm taper is something I haven't seen in another modern watch. There is also a gentle turn down in the lugs, helping it hug the wrist. Despite looking flat and angular from the top, the Diver 65 has plenty of curves. Apart from the Aquas, this is the most comfortable Oris I've worn. Thanks to the bold numerals and markers, the Diver 65 is also extremely legible. Speaking of the numerals, they are heavily distorted at the edges by the domed sapphire crystal. The heavily domed crystal is a calling card of the Diver 65. You might think that the distortion would make the watch hard to read at any other angle than straight on, but that isn't true. The watch remains readable except at extreme angles. Oris also did a nice job with the crystal in avoiding the milky ring that domed sapphire crystals can get, like the Omega Speedmaster with Sapphire. One of my gripes with the Diver 65 chronograph was the loom. The loom quality was vastly different between the hands and markers. That isn't the case with the three-hander. The loom glows brightly and the numerals look awesome when lit up. Overall, the Diver 65 is nicely finished. The grain on the brushing looks great and the polished areas on the sides of the case are blemish-free. Oris has always done a great job with the quality control on the watches I've reviewed and purchased. This was one of Oris's first vintage-inspired watches, and they did well with bringing it up to modern standards. The only thing apart from the styling that screams vintage is the loom color on the dial. Apart from that, this feels like a modern watch. There are some who might consider this blasphemy, but the Diver 65 is almost like a watch that was restored by Oris using modern materials, but to me that is a good thing. The look of the bezel helps the Diver 65 with that vintage aesthetic as well. However, the bezel action on the Diver 65 feels modern. The 120 clicks all feel solid, and the example I had for review had almost no backplay. It is also easy to operate as the bezel overhangs the case slightly. There are a few things I would change about the Diver 65. I would like the no-date version to become a non-limited edition. Even though the date blends into the dial well, its placement bothers me. While I do like the bracelet, I don't like how the end links fit the case, or rather, don't fit the case. The lugs are angular and come to a point at the bracelet. The end links are rounded and don't flow with the case of the watch. It feels like the fitment of the bracelet was an afterthought. I would also like to see Oris upgrade the Solita movement from the SW200 to the SW300. There's no reason not to have the higher tier movement in a watch commanding a $2,000 price tag. I'm nitpicking a little with these things, as the Diver 65 is a great watch. It's extremely comfortable, legible, and with the Solita movement, the Diver 65 will be reliable for years to come. This is vintage inspired done right. Thanks for checking out the video review, and for the full written review, head over to watchclicker.com.